Hello everyone, today I would like to review the Opaque Watercolors by Paul Rubens. So I bought the box of 36 colors and they are 15 milliliters tubes. On the box they say that they are rich in color with fine pigment particles, a good light fastness, better coverage, and they won't crack if you use thicker layers. So the tubes are nicely protected with foam, and the box contains a pamphlet that shows the colors per set. So it shows all the colors in the set of 12, in the set of 24, and in the set of 36. So there's a really nice variety of colors, and they seem to be put in the box randomly, any color, anywhere. The name is written in English, along with the color number. Now you can see that all those tubes have 5 little plus signs on them, right underneath the color name. Those usually indicate the light fastness, how well they'll do over time in the sun, for instance. And right away, I think it's kind of weird that they all have like super awesome light fastness, because there are some pigments that, because of their nature, they are not as light fast as others. So the first thing I did was to rearrange the colors in a way that makes more sense to me. And while I was looking at all the colors, I found 2 of them that are different colors, but they have the exact same name, which is strange. That's actually the reason why I used the translation app, to see if it was translated the wrong way. But even the translation is the same. So there are a few flaws right away, but I haven't started playing with them yet, so let's not judge too early. So the second thing I did was do swatches, which is something that I do all the time. So for a reason that I'm going to explain to you in a minute, with every tube, I decided to shake it to mix the colors. And with about a third of the tubes in the box, you can actually hear how liquid the paint is inside. Well, you can clearly see that this pink is very neon, and it still claims to have 5 little crosses, 5 stars. I can bet that unless the Paul Rubens company has figured out a way to make neon colors light fast, I am sure this color doesn't stand a chance in the sun, since neon colors are not light fast by nature. So I've been wanting to try this paint for a little while, and before I made up my mind, I watched a few review videos on YouTube. I read the comments as well to see if there were other people who had tried them without making the reviews. And it seems like most of the review videos are from people who received a set for free from Paul Rubens about 6 months or so ago. And they all seem to be saying the same thing, that they're very nice to play with, but there are a few flaws, like the error of marking on the tubes for the light fastness. And mostly what's been bothering people is the binder separation, which I have noticed too, but I have noticed that in other brands as well, better brands. But it's never really bothered me as much, so I didn't think it would bother me too much. But when I do my swatches, I usually take the paint right out of the tube, like literally from the tube. And the fact that there's a lot of binder separation, it means that for some of those tubes, when I squeeze a little bit out, all I'm getting is some liquid. I'm not getting any color or not much pigment. So when I shake the tubes, it kind of mixes them. But for some of the tubes that have a thicker consistency, it doesn't really work that way. So I know that it would have been easier for me if I had put the paint on the palette, but I didn't. With one of the blues, I tried to put a toothpick in the tube and tried to stir the paint that way. And it didn't really work that well, but just taking the paint from the toothpick that went deeper in the tube, I was able to get some thicker consistency. A couple greens were like that as well. And then as I was holding the tubes, they kind of felt lighter than the other tubes that I use. I don't know if it's because of the material they use for it. But then when I squeeze the air out of some of them so that I can reach the paint, It seems like I've used quite a bit of paint when I've rarely used anything. So I'm not sure if it's normal in general for tubes that they leave some air in there to allow for expansion with the change in temperatures or weather or something. I'm not quite sure how that works, but again, let's be open-minded and keep going on that journey of exploring those paints. So I could see that a lot of colors are actually pretty nicely opaque. And I didn't dilute them. I didn't need to dilute most of them anyways. I just wanted, again, to see what they look like right out of the tube. They are opaque watercolors, so there's supposed to be a hybrid between watercolors and gouache. I'm mostly interested in using them as gouache, or see if they can be used as gouache. So I wanted to test the opacity, basically. Now, as you can see, the consistency is different between the tubes. Some of them you actually don't have to squeeze the paint out at all. It just comes out just liquid. Yet, they still seem opaque. It's very strange. And some are a little thicker too. Some are more like gouache and some are more like watercolor and some are just liquid. So to try them out, I decided to do simple painting, something quick. And I tried different techniques, wet on wet and wet on dry. For the sky and the ocean, I wet the paper first to try to get a nice blend of colors. And it worked nicely. I didn't want the paint to be too thick for that area because I'm going to add more over it later. So since with gouache you have to work from thinner, more watered down layers and build with thicker layers for a better result, this worked out pretty well. Then I tried to use the infamous yellow ochre. A few people have said that tube exploded on them, so knowing that, I wanted to be very careful. And I can understand what must have happened if it's liquid like mine and there were air bubbles. All you have to do is squeeze the tube and end up getting the paint all over the place with all the air bubbles and the liquid paint. I was careful with it, and again, I didn't have to squeeze anything out. It just poured out of the tube. So compared to gouache, because the paint is not as thick, I had to adjust and not add too much water to mix them. Actually, you can just use the paint right out of the tube, really, for some of them at least. So that was an adjustment to figure out the opacity of each color. But they're really pleasant paints to play with. I did have to build some layers with some of the colors because they were more transparent than others, or because they were more liquid. But all in all, it was pretty fun. It's kind of like if you're using the Himimiya gouache, for instance, they're not as thick as brands that come in tubes. The more classic brands like Winsor & Newton or Holbein or Amgram. Those are the most opaque ones. And so each time you have to adjust to their different properties. Even amongst the more professional brands, they are not quite the same either. So you might or might not like those paints. It really depends on your preference and your technique. I thought they were pretty fun to play with. I should try them as watercolors as well. Again, I mostly got them to play with in my sketchbook for practice. And I don't expect much as far as light fastness is concerned, and it doesn't matter if I'm just playing with them. I will say that yes, the binder separation might be annoying, especially with some colors. When you're trying to put paint on your palette and nothing comes out but liquid, or clear liquid, I should say, no pigments. That's a bit frustrating. But again, I've had that happen with other brands too, and I guess you learn to deal with it. One thing I must tell you is that when I watched those review videos, I kind of didn't feel like buying the set because I think it was around $70, and the artists trying that paint, they were a little disappointed. So I thought for that much money, I probably shouldn't. And then I was actually able to get the set for a lot cheaper. So I don't know if they're actually getting rid of this batch, and that's why they lowered the price. So that maybe they'll come up with something better quality. Who knows? But I got it so that I could try it for myself and mostly play with it in my sketchbooks, just practice paint. So it was fun to do that little sketch. You know, it was, like I said, it was a really quick painting, not too detailed. When I removed the tape, I noticed that I had gone past it with the paint, but with a damp brush, I was able to rub it off, which was really nice. So I liked the effect of the sky and the water. That's not quite as thick as gouache, but thicker than watercolor, more opaque than watercolor. I think it looks pretty nice because you can still see the paper shine through a little bit. So that's it for me for today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you're feeling super generous, you can always click the thanks button right next to the share button to support this channel. If you have tried the Paul Rubens Opaque Watercolors, I'd love to hear how you like it. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you like to play with it? Tell me all about it in the comments. Thank you all for stopping by. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you soon with another video. Bye bye.